So this is now the final um, chapter that we're going to go over, and it's going to be animal nutrition. So the objective here is to analyze the roles of digestive organs in animals. But the main model that we're going to use is the human digestive system. Okay, so animals have two basic requirements. They need chemical energy to synthesize ATP, and they need carbon-containing compounds for building molecules. Okay, because animals are heterotrophs, so they have to obtain their energy and nutrients that they need from other organisms, right? They're not like plants that produce their all the nutrients that they need. So there are four processes that are needed to obtain the energy from food. There's ingestion, which is just bringing the food into the digestive tract, right? Also known as the alimentary canal or the gastrointestinal tract. There's the digestion part, which is breaking the food down. Absorption, taking up the nutrients, and elimination, so getting rid of the waste. So here we can see this is a sea anemone, how they process their food. So they take it in, right, for during ingestion, taking in the food into the digestive tract. They digest it, breaking it down into smaller pieces. They absorb the nutrients, right, after it's broken down, and then they eliminate the waste. So if you remember from the Cnidaria lab, uh, that Cnidarians have an incomplete digestive tract because they only have one opening. So the food goes in through the mouth, it's digested, absorbed, and all of that, and then the waste is eliminated through that same opening. So they only have one opening. So that's why it's called an incomplete digestive tract. So, all right, so digestion is a key process in animals because unlike plants and other unicellular organisms, most animals do not acquire the nutrients as individual molecules. Because there are some endoparasites that do absorb the nutrients directly without having to break them down. So that would be from like the Platyhelminthes lab, right? Those endoparasitic worms. The nutrients have to be extracted and waste materials then have to be eliminated in a in the animal digestive tracts. So, as I already mentioned, there's the incomplete digestive tracts, which just have one opening for both ingesting food and also eliminating waste. And this has a mouth that leads into the gastrovascular cavity. A cavity is just a space inside of the animal. And then for the complete digestive tract, or animals with complete digestive tracts, they have two openings, the mouth and the anus. So there's an internal tube that communicates directly with the external environment uh, via these openings. Okay, so yeah, here you can see a close-up of the sea anemone um, digestive tract, where you have the tentacles that trap the food and bring the food into the mouth. The food brings it into the digestive tract, so this pharynx here. And then we have the gastrovascular cavity, the space in here where the food is digested and then absorbed, and then it's taken out that same way that it came in. So with complete digestive tracts, um, these animals have some advantages. because they have different chemical and physical processes that can be confined to different compartments within the tract. Also, due to the one-way flow of food and waste, the material can be ingested and digested without interruptions. And there are several vital organs and glands that are connected to the digestive tracts that function as accessory structures. And these contribute things like digestive enzymes and other products that aid in digestion. So these accessory structures could be things like the salivary glands or the pancreas, things like that. So here we can see a diagram of the human digestive tract. So starts here at the mouth. This is where the mechanical digestion and also some chemical digestion occurs. So the food is broken down. It then goes into the esophagus, which is a long tube that pushes the food down into the stomach. So when you guys did the fetal pig dissection, you were having a hard time finding the esophagus because it was underneath uh, the organs. So it was underneath the heart, the lungs, and also the liver. Okay, but it is a tube that connects from the mouth to the stomach. So from the stomach, this is where a lot of the proteins or some proteins and fats are digested. So here, a lot of it is just mechanical. It's the stomach churns the food, and also there's hydrochloric acid and things like pepsin that help digest the food. From there, it goes into the small intestine. Okay. And in that first loop of the small intestine is where you can also see an accessory organ like the pancreas. So from the small intestine, then it goes through different regions of the small intestine, which you guys don't have to know, but there are different regions. There's the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. And then from the small intestine, there's the large intestine, where a lot of the water is reabsorbed, and then it exits out of the anus. So in humans, there is no cecum like the one you saw in the fetal pig. Humans don't have a cecum. They have what's called an appendix. Okay. But everything else is pretty much like the fetal pig. So you got the liver here, the stomach, the pancreas, the small intestine, the large intestine. There's the gallbladder underneath the liver. So that's where the bile is stored. Okay, so bile that's made by the liver is stored in the gallbladder, and then it's secreted. It's delivered to the small intestine to help with digestion. Okay, so in humans, the mechanical digestion involves chewing and smooth muscle contraction in the stomach and small intestines. So there's distinct chemical changes that occur as food moves through each compartment in the digestive tract. In the mouth, you have enzymes and saliva that begin chemical uh, digestion of carbohydrates and lipids. Okay? And then the chemical digestion of proteins begins in the stomach, okay, with the hydrochloric acid. The chemical processing of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, it's completed in the small intestine. And the small molecules that result are absorbed in the small intestine, okay, along with other things like water and vitamins. Then in the large intestine, more water is absorbed, and the material that remains in the large intestine is the feces that are pushed out through the anus. Okay. So the chewing makes the food particles smaller and softer, And this, along with cooking, helps prepare the food for enzyme action. And human saliva contains components that break down things like starch into sugars. Okay, so we have the salivary glands in the mouth that secrete amylase, which is uh, sort of a mucus, and this allows the food to be swallowed. So it helps push down the food down the esophagus. But then there's other enzymes like salivary amylase that breaks down starch into sugars, and then lingual lipase, which begins the digestion of lipids. So once the food is swallowed, it enters the esophagus, which again connects the mouth to the stomach. And then the food is then pushed down through a process called peristalsis. So it's a wave-like contraction. Okay, so the system is a reflex, which has an automatic reaction to stimulus. Okay, and here it's stimulated by the act of swallowing. So peristalsis is what um, it would allow you to swallow food even if you were hanging upside down. It's it's not really, the food doesn't go down because of gravity. It goes down because of the peristalsis that pushes the food down. Okay. So you have the muscle contraction that constricts the esophagus above the food. Okay, and it continues until the food is pushed all the way down from the esophagus into the stomach. So in birds, they have a modified esophagus that's called the crop here. And the, some birds have it, and it's just the widening segment of the esophagus, which is used for food storage, but not all of the birds have it. Um, for example, owls don't have it, and some of the waterfowl, like ducks and geese, also don't have it. But they have other types of modifications to the esophagus that allow them to hold food. But yeah, but that's the main function of the crop. It's just to hold food. Um, and for the birds that do have it, it allows them to regurgitate food to their young and things like that. Okay, so moving on to the stomach. The stomach is a tough muscular pouch that's bracketed on both ends by muscles called sphincters. So these control the passage of material. So there's a sphincter where the stomach connects to the esophagus. So this is the stomach where it connects to the esophagus. That has a sphincter. And then there's another sphincter where the stomach connects to the small intestine. So the food enters the stomach, and then those muscular contractions churn and mix the food, and then it starts to break down some of the food mechanically. And then the other main function of the stomach is to partially digest proteins and lipids. So here you can see that sphincter, like where the esophagus connects to the stomach. It's called the esophageal sphincter. And then there's another sphincter down here where it connects to the small intestine. So this is called the pyloric sphincter. Okay. On the stomach, you can also, so this is the lumen of the stomach. So this is where the digestion occurs. Okay. The hydrochloric acid is produced by cells on the stomach. So it produces the acid, and then also the mechanical uh, churning breaks down the food. And then it moves on to the small intestine. And some animals that are called ruminants, so these are animals like sheep, goats, uh, cows, they have a four-chambered stomach. that specialize for digesting cellulose, right? Because they're eating plants. So these animals have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria and some protists that live in their stomach. So the food enters the rumen where the bacteria and the protists break down the cellulose with an enzyme called cellulase, and this produces glucose. So then the ATP is produced by the symbiotic organisms via the fermentation of glucose. And also there's fatty acids that are produced and then absorbed by the ruminant for energy. So the ruminants themselves are not able to break down the cellulose that's found in plants, but the bacteria that live inside of their rumen or the stomach is what breaks down the cellulose, and the animals feed on the byproducts of that fermentation. So they benefit by obtaining the ATP from the process of fermenting glucose, and then also on the fatty acids that are produced um, as a byproduct of fermentation. So next to the rumen is the reticulum, where the plant material is also partially digested. And after uh, the partial digestion, the ruminant will regurgitate portions of the material uh, into the mouth, and this is called the cud. So the animal chews the cud and then it re-swallows it and it takes it to a different chamber that's called the omasum. And here the water and materials are absorbed through the omasum. Okay. From the omasum, it'll go into the abomasum, which is the final chamber. And here it pretty much acts like the stomach of other animals. So it contains the pepsin and other digestive enzymes, right? And so just to summarize this, the ruminant's food consists of the fatty acids and other compounds that are produced as byproducts of fermentation. So the bacteria and the protists are the ones that are fermenting the cellulose, and the ruminants are benefiting from those byproducts. So here you can see the cow, when it eats the food, it first goes into the rumen. This is where the bacteria and the protists are housed. So they're the ones that are breaking down the cellulose with enzymes like cellulase. And then it goes into the reticulum. And then from here, it continues to get broken down. Then it gets regurgitated into cud. They chew on the cud to further break it down. And then when they re-swallow it, it goes into the omasum. And here's where like the water and nutrients are absorbed. Then it goes into the stomach, the abomasum, and then to the small intestine. And animals like birds or most birds, there's also another modification to the stomach that's called the gizzard, which you can see here. So the gizzard is where birds that eat, um, or usually birds that eat a lot of seeds or nuts, they'll store small grains of sand or pebbles and things like that to help break down the food. So you see this in a lot of the seed eaters or grain eaters. Okay? But that's what it is. All right, so we'll pause here and then we'll continue on the next video. So the next one will be the last one.